I wonder if that Sydney is the Sydney that I know.
It is.
The Cindy that I see is not the Cindy that I know. Cindy, do you have an assistant today? Oh, it's Evan now.
All right. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. We got 47 precious minutes, so we're going to get after it. But good morning to all, whether you're on the East Coast or West Coast or somewhere in between. Glad that you're joining us this morning for a 47-minute webinar, and we're going to be focusing on successful fundraiser mindset. We have a special guest with us. So let me give you a quick overview before we make an introduction. And that's going to be the first thing we do is introduce our guest, but then we're going to be talking about this abundance versus scarcity mindset. We're going to have some time for Q&R. So if you find yourself having a question, whether it's about the philosophy of having a successful fundraising mindset or very practical, nitty gritty question, we'll have a time for those questions. And we want to respond to those. We also have a golden nugget for you. And as always, we do ask for your top takeaway. So we'll be doing that a little bit later in the webinar as well. So be thinking about what's the one thing that you're going to be taking away or implementing from today's content. But with that, I'm going to hand things over to our host, Kent Stroman. Kent, you going to make an introduction for us this morning?
Yes, I'm happy to introduce my friend, Sarah Grounds. And wow, Sarah, to think that really we've only known each other for a couple of years. A lot's been packed into those 2 years.
A whole lot.
So I have more than 47 minutes of things that I'd like to say about Sarah, but I'm not going to say them all. But here's what I'll tell you. Sarah is founder and executive director at City Lights Foundation of Oklahoma. And she is the perfect choice for this topic, abundance versus scarcity mentality. And there's so many layers to Sarah's abundance approach that she takes. But one just has to do with the creation of this organization that I've come to know as City Lights Foundation of Oklahoma. But just to start us off, Sarah, I'm curious, would you tell a little bit about the organization, but where does that name come from?
Yeah. So the City Lights Foundation of Oklahoma is an organization that works with people experiencing homelessness. So that's what we do. Everything from providing just relational service to dignified housing and everything in between. But I think when I think about abundance and where it came from, truly it started with just very much this like natural abundance that I saw in other people. So I'd went through a health scare and ended up in Boston for a couple of weeks, and our community just came around us and supported us in all of the ways. They did everything from coming alongside and flying to Boston to be with us for that surgery, to sit with my family during that time, to taking care of my littles during that time, to providing gift cards so that my husband would have a financial support while in Boston, staying, downtown in a hotel and eating and all of those things for 2 weeks. So kind of coming on the backside of that, what really prompted us to start doing something was everybody else's abundance. They set the example. And I think, we talk about just this foundational abundance, even outside of like financial stuff, of kindness. And their abundance of community and care really sparked in us that we wanted to do more than what we were doing. And we had no idea at that time what that even meant. But really, when we came back, we started looking for what we wanted to do, and ended up starting our program Nightlight Tulsa, where we serve people under a bridge, which then grew into our organization, the City Lights Foundation of Oklahoma. So one thing that I always throw out, people are like, why City Lights? Lights stands for loving individuals, giving hope, and touching souls. If you spell that out, those are the first letters of those words. And so that's really where that came from. But it really started from abundance of other people's care of us.
Well, the concept of light isn't automatic when you show up. And thank you for all the different ways that you do bring light into the world in general. But having the opportunity to watch you touch people's lives. When I think about a person of action, um, and Haley, this might cause you to laugh because you were in the room also. I remember one time we were having a meeting at the headquarters for City Lights Foundation. And all of a sudden I heard this screeching noise. And here's what I thought. So it's on a pretty busy 4-lane street. I mean, it's not on the street. It's only like 3 feet removed, right? But I thought it sounds like something fell off of a truck that was driving past because there was this grating noise. And then I turned around and looked, and there was this little car spinning around upside down. And I mean, before I could even process what I was seeing, Sarah was up on her feet, out the door, across there, getting the lady out of the car, and immediately directing other people exactly what they needed to do. I don't know if you remember this, but the thing that she was most focused on was my phone, where's my phone? And I see a car seat and a blanket, and I'm thinking, where's the kid? And so anyhow, as soon as we figured out there wasn't a child in the car, or not in the car either one, but Sarah's telling me where to go in a most polite way. You'll meet these people that probably knew something about her. But Sarah, your predisposition to action is inspiring, and I know that's just one teeny little glimpse that's kind of a daily expression for you, but to start an organization and to serve people in such great and immediate need, it has to come from abundance. So one of the questions I'm just curious about. Okay. You'd like me to call you action? Sari's talking to you. But one of the things, where does your abundance mentality come from? Is that innate? Is it something learned? Is it disciplined? And I want you just for a moment to try to not be modest and just talk a little bit about what's kind of the source of your abundance.
Well, I'm already disclaiming your story because I've had a lot of trauma nursing experience. So I'm supposed to jump in on situations like that. So for those who don't know, I was a trauma and neuro ICU nurse for 13 years prior to starting this organization, and for the first couple of years starting it as well. So hopefully I still have some of those skills that jump in to action. But so thank you for that. But man, I think, it's all the above, right? So for me, I definitely grew up in surrounded by people that I think were very kind and giving and caring of others. And so I think some of that is innate and just taught and learned by watching, my grandparents and my parents and other people that I went to church with and things like that, watching them care for others and making that a priority. So I think that piece was taught. But I also think that there are things that one of my favorite quotes is from Bob Goff, and it says, I'm just a rough draft of who I'm still becoming. And I think, I'm still becoming, and there are things that I have to discipline in myself, and that I have people around me. We have an incredible team at City Lights that continuously reminds me that we're playing the long game when I get very short-sighted and and get caught up in other things. And so I think that is a discipline piece where I'm still working on that, and I'm still trying to grow in seeing the abundance and things and not fall back to what a lot of times I think society tells us is that we need to look at this scarcity mindset where there's not enough. And so I think, there's pieces of it that have been developed over the years and pieces of it that I'm still working on. And I think an important piece of that is having people around me that are constantly showing me and reminding me, and that we're able to rely on each other as what culture we want to set and what we want to believe in.
Well, it seems like you do a really good job of attracting, identifying, and then recruiting those people. On my screen, there's one sitting right next to you. It's Haley.
Yeah.
Good morning, Haley. And she is such an important part of it as well. I'm just curious, you said that you primarily serve people who are experiencing homelessness. You do a great job of inviting people to exit homelessness and provide resources for them to be able to do that. Where does the abundance or scarcity mentality fit into homelessness?
Mm,
People who are experiencing that. Do you have
yeah.
any observations about that?
Oh, there's so many. I think there's different levels of it when we're working with people that I was thinking about this question this morning and you had not given it to me. And so I have so many thoughts that are going so many different ways. But I think, we a lot of times we battle this thing over, like, whether it be enough money to deal with the issues surrounding homelessness, or where we're going to put people that are experiencing homelessness, and it's a space area type thing. And there are so many issues around all of that. And I was thinking today specifically about people that I know that are experiencing homelessness, and what do I know about them? And I thought back to last winter. We were out on outreach. It was cold, it was snowy, and we came up under a bridge, and it was the end of the night, and we had given away most of everything we had. I don't know if Haley was with us on this outreach or not, but we'd given away, I mean, like, didn't have but like one or two more blankets and maybe a coat. And we watched as this group of people under this bridge that were all experiencing these same things um, shared with each other and gave to each other, and gave that coat to the other person instead of taking it for themselves, and gave the blanket away to the other person. And I thought, like, man, that's the abundance mindset. Like, I'll be okay. I'm going to take care of my neighbor. And so we see it in lots of different ways. We see incredible generosity. The people that come alongside us and support us in this work. I think we also do a lot to teach that cultural mindset of abundance for volunteers that come out with us, and really work to shift some of that stigma and some of those things that go along with that. But also we see it in all different ways across our city and across the different people that we get to encounter.
Wow. So I'm going to ask everybody if you can respond to this in the chat box. When we think about abundance and or scarcity, what areas does that apply to? Now I'm going to take the easy one and set it aside. So money, that's kind of a given, right? But besides money, what are areas where we can either see abundance or see scarcity? What comes to mind? So real quick, just jot something down in the chat box. Somebody said relationships. Thank you, Peter. Somebody else, staff. So Scott, I wonder if that's too many or too few staff. What's the abundance? Commitment, health, resources, dreams. Wow. So Haley, would you mind maybe just comment a little bit on dreams and abundant scarcity?
Yeah, I think I was just thinking of like having the capacity to dream. And I feel like that is something that Sarah has had from the very beginning. I mean, I feel like normal people don't wake up and they're like, yeah, I'm going to start a nonprofit today. And then to take that from kind of a grassroots organization and this thing that was just happening once a week to now something that happens and is serving people every single day. I think that like you have to have abundance and thinking of that, and also thinking of things that can be better. I just think that the capacity to dream is a big thing. And I think when we're living in a scarcity mindset, we don't dream big and dream about how we can, truly make a difference for people in innovative and creative ways.
Wow. Thank you so much. I in preparation for this, the word dreams never came into my mind, and I think maybe that's the biggest one, the imagination. Um, um, so, Sarah, kind of back to you for a second. What, and I wrote this down because I didn't want to leave it out. Actually, this is kind of a two sides of the same coin type question. What affirms bold confidence or abundance mindset for you in your experience? What affirms and what challenges? What is it that causes you to maybe shrink back a little bit from when you look at confidence or abundance?
I mean, I think the answer to both of those is relationships for me. So, you know, the relationships where people really just show up in these amazingly generous ways, and it can be, you know, that looks different for everybody, but they show up very generous. Like we have had people donate vehicles to us unexpected. We have had people show up with, you know, coats or write a large check and hand it to us under the bridge, completely unexpected. And you open it up and it's like $20,000 and you're like, what in the world? You're handing this to me under a bridge, you know? Like, but we see like tons of things like that, or people just coming alongside or remembering to just send that message that says like, I believe in what you're doing and it's making a difference. Like there's all sorts of levels of that generosity that inspires confidence and gives you the keep going mentality. But I think also like the challenge is relationships. And some of those relationships are people that you encounter that are not as in tune with what your passion might be, or may view handling it in a different way than what you feel like you've learned to and educated yourself on what is going to be best for the organization or for taking care of people or things like that. And so I think the relationship piece it goes either way, and either kind of making you pull back and ask yourself, is this really making a difference? Or more so the question that I ask is like, can we do this? Am I the right person? You know, those are the questions where my brain goes to the other side. And so I think those relationships are really important. And I think for us at City Lights, that's one of the things that we really lean into and really try to be willing to sit with people that do disagree or don't agree or don't believe, so that we can hear and we can share on both sides of that.
Hey, I want to ask a question along those same lines. I mean, clearly there's people maybe have a natural tendency to lean towards an abundance mindset or towards scarcity mindset. But Sarah, as you think of specifically staff or maybe even volunteers that get involved with your organization, is that mindset something that people just intuitively have to have, or is that something that can be learned and adapted? You know, when you, let's say you're hiring someone, you're interviewing a person and they have some great qualifications and skills, but they don't have that abundance mindset. Can you teach that? Can people learn that? Or is that like either you got it or you don't?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can teach it. I think it's always easier if somebody already has that, right? But I think like it is learnable. And I think, but part of that is like culture setting, right? So we have a culture of abundance. When we first started talking about abundance at City Lights, probably about 7 years ago, it was new to a lot of people. Like we were saying, you know, we're not going to think in this place of scarcity, or we're too small, or we're not going to get what we need. We're going to think of this place of there's abundance and there's a spot for everyone that we care for. And so that's been kind of a new shift. I think also we have people that come to us. Homelessness is a huge topic across the nation. And we have people come to us with all sorts of different stigmas, experiences, and everything else. And so as we have people come alongside us, we truly believe in the power of meaningful relationship to restore community and to restore that abundance thought process to others. But I think it's really hard to do that out of proximity to people. So you have to be in proximity to people for anybody to be able to move over to that other mindset and culture.
Okay.
That's the only way to do it.
Well, and we got a fantastic question in the chat. So I'll throw this out to both Kent and Sarah. But the question is, how do you interject that thinking with your board? So maybe you have board members, or even like Sarah used the word culture. Maybe there's a board culture of scarcity versus abundance. Kent, I know I've heard you say many times that a lot of your consulting practice is really just mindset, getting people to think differently. So can you, maybe whoever wants to take that, unpack that? Ken, I know people love to hear, like, if I have hire a consultant, they're just going to do mindset, coaching or whatever. That's kind of like, is that really productive? Is that the best way to go about it? Or why is it productive? So can you guys speak to that?
Well, and I've got some real biases, so I'd like Sarah to have an opportunity to go first.
Sure you would. Oh man.
Well, I mean, we've kind of walked through some of this space, right,
Yeah.
Sarah?
Yeah, we have. I think definitely. I think from the beginning, so when we really started talking about abundance, that came from a visit to Community First Village in Austin, Texas, around Alan Graham, which is an incredible person. And just listening to him and watching his staff and what he has cultivated there. And so we brought some of those pieces back in the way that we talk, and really in our phrasing, and using the same phrases frequently among all of us. Like when you talk to anybody from City Lights, they will a lot of times use the same phrasing for different things. And I think that that's kind of built into the culture. And then, I took people from here to there to learn from the people that were doing it right. And so I think for our board took a trip down to Austin. They got to hear the same things that I was saying. It kind of amplified my voice, because it wasn't just coming from me, it was coming from other people in that same mindset. And so those are some of the ways that we've done it here. We still, as Kent mentioned, we still work on it constantly, and have walked through some of that with our board. And like I said, people still walk through it with me. Like, I think once you build that culture in, you have other people that are also reminding you that you're in that culture, because I'm not exempt from falling into this scarcity mindset sometimes. And so I think it's really important to build that within your organization.
Yeah, Sarah, as I listen to you talk, I'm just flooded with memories, memories of our journey, and I'll just say this for the room. So City Lights Foundation is in the quiet phase of a major fundraising campaign. Is that a big enough word, Sarah? Major?
It sure is.
So, and I'm going to use, so when we first started working together, the vision, the price tag for the vision had a couple of digits, and then 6 zeros behind it. I mean, we're talking about, where I come from, that's a lot of money, right? And so I'll just give you an example of kind of two different ways of asking a question that I had never thought about till this morning. And that is, one is a scarcity mentality, and the other one's abundance mentality. So I'm just going to use the number $10 million. It was bigger than that. But here's in boardroom, here's the scarcity minded question, and it's very common. Can we raise $10 million to address homelessness in Tulsa, Oklahoma? Now, it's not necessarily even asked as a challenge, but if you just think about that question by itself, can we raise this much money for that here and now? Here's the reason I call it a scarcity question. First of all, there's only two appropriate answers, either yes or no. Right? So half of the possibilities beg a negative response. And you only have half a chance of what I call getting it right. And so that's a scarcity mentality. we can change that question into an abundance mentality question with just 3 letters, a 3-letter word, and it's how. How can we raise $10 million to address homelessness in Tulsa, Oklahoma right now? Well, if you think about that question by itself, what percentage of the answers are no? Well, there's not even room for a no, right? So it asks, it presumes it's possible, and we just got to figure out how. Well, before it's all over, we find out we were only asking half the question to begin with. But if we can get the mindset right to begin with, the how versus the can, it just so dramatically changes. And frankly, I think what happens is it forces us to do what Haley talked about earlier, and that's dream. I mean, nobody dreams about how to ruin things, right? We only dream about positive things. So, yeah, what else do you want to say, Sarah?
Well, I mean, I think that's like I can think of a perfect example of that just within our own organization. So we had been doing just our once a week nightlight outreach, which is it's not small. I mean, we serve about 350 people every week at that outreach, and we mobilize anywhere from 75 to 100 to come alongside with us. And so, but we were to a point where like we knew that what we were doing wasn't going to be the final place that we landed, that we wanted to be able to do more that was more sustainable and had long-term effects for people. And so as we started looking at that, we only had one employee at that time. And I don't even know that I was paid. You know, like we had one person that was committed at that time, and everybody else was volunteers. And I knew that, like, to even be able to dream that, I couldn't do it by myself. And so we had to have a conversation as a board of what do we need. And so we ended up hiring our second and then our third person, brought them on, and then really started being able to dream. And I remember saying that at that time, I feel like I can dream again for what this is supposed to be, because we have staff to be able to look at our capacity to be able to move forward and do more. And so that was probably about 7 years ago that we had that conversation as a board, and just within myself of like, I know this isn't where we're supposed to stop. I don't know where that is at yet, but I can't even think about that until I meet these capacity issues. So it's a great example.
Yeah. You know, there's so much rich stuff in this space, and I want to make sure we have room to respond to some questions besides my own my own brilliant questions. But Aaron, you want to kind of give us a little bit of direction here?
Yeah. Let's throw it out there just for some feedback. And we started doing the Q&R, question and response, a little earlier, so we have time to address all the questions. So if I'll throw 2 opportunities out there for our live audience here on Zoom. If you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. Also, if maybe you are interested in some of this mentality, mindset work in your organization, or you just want more resources like this, we have some emails that go out on a regular basis, and we also do work with boards and staff when it comes to the abundance versus scarcity mindset. So if you want to drop your email address in the screen there, I threw that up on your screen. If you're not getting our communication, feel free to do that. And then we'll take some questions in the chat. It's Q&R, question response. We may not have all the answers, so it's not Q&A, but Q&R. But hopefully we will get some answers. So feel free to drop more questions there. And then, of course, if what's your email if you want to get some more communication, or if you want to engage with us. And if you're watching a recording of this on YouTube or another platform, just drop your email or a message in the comments, and we'll be sure to follow up with you. And some of our favorite work is just helping organizations think better, because those thoughts lead to beliefs and action. And when organizations start acting like they're worthy of the $10 million or $100 million campaign, exciting things happen and the mission gets pushed forward.
So, Aaron, I got to tell you something funny.
Mhm.
And Gary, this is especially for you. You made me laugh. One time, a friend of mine called me a verbal literalist because I see things and I take them literally. And so, the stroke of a key, Gary asked the question, how do you interject that thinking with your bores? And I think it means boards, but I had to laugh the way it came through. Bores. Um, really, really great question. And actually, before I'll make a comment, and then Sarah, I'd love for you or Haley if you want to make some comments, because again, I know we've navigated that, but I think a lot of it really, I think my job with boards a lot of times is to give people permission, kind of extend an invitation for them to think differently and to speak openly. Another piece that goes with that for me, a tool, and that is the alternative. And sometimes if we get hung up on saying yes, I'll invite the room to advocate for saying no. And when we start looking at the contrast between those, a lot of times it'll make the path forward really clear. But Sarah, Haley, any thoughts from your own experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen that in our boardroom where I think if one of the things that I've very much learned from you, Kent, is to leave space for questions and leave space for people to raise concerns and to not panic, to just let it flow. I think I'm not 100% there because sometimes I want people to just go the way I want my board to go. But also, it's allowed for a lot of growth across all the levels of our board. And then I think also just the second part of what you said, advocating against it. I mean, like when we're talking about all of these amazing causes that we have across lots of different types of nonprofits and people that are raising funds for things, when you argue against the goodness that you're bringing, it's really hard to sit in that very long, because the people that are sitting with you most of the time are as passionate about things as you are, and hopefully wanting to advance that cause. So when they're asked to argue against not housing people, it really shifts the room in a way that reminds you what you're there for. So.
Yeah, I think having that mission focus is so important.
Mhm.
It's so easy to drift away from that. There's a question in the chat. It says, without being negative, how can we realistically deal with the competition for fundraising dollars, as there are so many causes that are raising funds? And I'll give one response to this and throw it back to the panel for another one. But what I've discovered is it's quite often and easy to let the voice of one person represent the voice of everybody.
Mhm.
And so if one person says, well, there's limited dollars for, in all these other organizations and only so many people are going to get it, it's easy to let that one voice, we paint everyone else with that brush, and that one voice dominates our mind. And this is where some of that mindset comes into play. And I was on a call, probably a week ago with a very large foundation, and I was talking to them. It was a kind of peer-to-peer conversation. But one of the things this person said is, man, some years they're struggling to give away their minimum requirement, distribution, because they're giving away money, but they can't give away enough. And so they're struggling with that. And then there's other years where they're definitely exceeding the minimum. And so they're looking into their own internal budget, if you will, what they've predetermined they're going to give away as a max. And those, there's those voices out there too. And it's like, which one are you going to let dominate your headspace? Is it this foundation that's like, well, we don't have enough places to give our money to even hit our minimum distribution? That you got to balance it. And it's easy to hone in on like that one negative and let that be our intrusive thought, but correcting ourselves and not letting that one thought dominate everything. And money is one of the greatest and most available resources that humanity has right now. And so that's a lot of a lot of work that we're doing is just coaching that thought process of like, okay, first of all, what's true and what's real? Just because one person says it or has an opinion, yeah, okay, maybe they do have limited dollars, but when you look at our region or our nation, there's more money out there than we need, than all of us on this call needs, and it's available. So I would really suggest like not letting the one Debbie Downer or the one person that gives some critical feedback, don't let that dominate the thought process. Make sure you balance that with everyone else. Anyone else, Sarah, Kent, want to speak to that?
You want to jump in, Kent, or you want me to?
Yeah. You go first.
So I think like I love this question, Beth, because I think it's so at the heart of everyone that is raising dollars for important things, right? We don't want to be in competition with other things that need resources as well, but also we want the reality of like, can we raise these funds? And so I think I don't think that has to be a negative question. I think it is one that you are just searching and saying like, how can we actually do this? And I think we ask ourselves that all the time. I mean, there are plenty of amazing organizations in Tulsa that are working with people experiencing homelessness. But like when we go back to the cause and the people and what we know in our experiences, to us, it's not a matter of like competing or can we raise this money? Like we have the time. We're willing to put in the time. And if it takes a little bit longer, it takes a little bit longer because we know the outcome on the other side is going to be so incredible for the people that we work with. And so, and that's going to be life changing. And so for me, when I get competitive, which I do, I do get competitive. But when I start feeling that way, I just have to remind myself that this is a big enough problem that's going to need a big response. And as Haley always says, it's a community issue that needs a community response. And so that's going to take a lot of different people working together and a lot of people being moved from that scarcity mindset to this abundance mindset. And we know how to do that. And we know how to do that really well. And so Kent still talks about getting on the same side of the table as people. And I think that is inclusive of our funders, but also inclusive of our partners. Like, how do we get on the same side of the table, all working for a cause that will be better for everyone?
And you do that so beautifully. This question, Beth, when I first saw that, it instantly triggered a memory. My mentor in campaign fundraising, his name is Norm Edwards. But I think he gave me a huge gift just by positioning. We never position ourselves to compete against other nonprofits. So, I mean, that's a phrase, right? And never is not a word that I think really we need to use a lot, but I like it right there. We never compete against other organizations. And why? Number one, it's not our job. But I think whenever the word competition comes to mind, whether it's the word or the concept, I search for us that we need to compete for and not against. So we're competing for the benefit of people who are experiencing homelessness. We're not competing against any other charity. We're not competing against the funder that chooses not to fund this priority that we addressed, right? And so, like Aaron said, money is the most abundant commodity in the world. The challenge is for that to find us. And real quick, I'm going to just tell you a story. Our job is to focus and do well what we do well, rather than to diminish others who are doing well at what we don't do or what they do, right? So I was having this conversation with this guy's a titan of industry. I mean, very prominent, affluent, et cetera, et cetera. He's the chairman of a board that I was doing a campaign for. And he asked me, what should my gift be for the campaign? And I'm not going to tell you who it was, but I said, John, I can't answer that question for you. I said, here's an idea. Your gift should be aspirational. It should be aspirational for you and inspirational to others. And so later on, he came back. He said, I'm still struggling with that. I said, okay, I'll make it easier for you. At this time, since you're chairman of the board, the organization, a major campaign, I said, I'm just encourage you to make the organization among your top 1, 2, or 3 charities. And he said, well, I'm on 10 boards. I can't do that. And I said, John, I'm not worried about 9 of them. Okay. So our job isn't to worry about, top 3 is on 10 boards. Well, I think it's too many boards, but that's not, I'm not going to let that diminish the emphasis. There's one organization, and if you want to lead it well, you need to be among the top 1, 2, or 3. Let the other 7, 8, or 9 figure their deal out. That's not my issue. And so again, I think back to the question of what do we do with that stuff? Most of that we just don't do anything with it. It's not our stuff. And we've got to make a case for support for our mission, and somebody else has to do the same thing. The poor funders are stuck in the middle. They got to figure it out. I can't do the job for them.
Hey, we have a golden egg, a little golden nugget that we're going to drop at the end here. But real quick, I just want to share one thing that's coming up that is a very practical way to spread this abundance mindset among the staff, fundraising volunteers, even board members, and that's the Asking Academy. We have a classic starting in January of 25. The summit is in February 4th and 5th, 2 days on site. Really transforms fundraising results. You just raise more money, period. Oh, Sarah, yeah, Sarah's been through this. Sarah, you want to, I'll throw the website up here. You want to speak to that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. If you can get a team of people from your agency to go to this, or just even you, this is the most incredible thing that we've done, and it completely shifted our fundraising. I think from our first year out from this academy, we raised around $12 million. So I think it is an incredible opportunity for you and your team. I can't give it enough high praises. It was one of the best things that we've done for our organization. So go do it. It's worth it.
If you want more information, go to askingacademy.com or just write the word Asking Academy in the chat and I can follow up with you. We want to hear back from
Sarah.
We want to hear back from everyone. What's your top takeaway? And drop that in the chat as well. If there's a top takeaway that you that you're walking away with. And for the kind of the golden nugget here, a little bonus to end us out, I took some words that I heard Kent say this weekend, and actually Scott is on the call. Scott probably heard this too, but we tend to prove ourselves right. Kent, what do you mean by that, especially when it comes into the fundraiser mindset, scarcity versus abundance?
Yeah, so that kind of pairs with this idea of saying no for others. And so a lot of times, we're trying to raise some money, and one of the ways we say no for others, well, we can't ask them for a gift. And either it's because they've never given or they've already given, right? But whatever okay. So when we lead with that, we can't ask them for a gift. And then when we act on it and don't ask them for a gift, we prove ourselves to be exactly right. They're never going to give, right? It's not that they can't give, it's because they won't, because we don't ask them. So if we will do the opposite and put ourselves at risk there, well, we must ask them to give. And if there's a no, let's let them come up with it. Let's don't give them one of ours. I mean, keep all your no's for yourself, right? Let other people use their own no's. So don't, and we just naturally work hard to prove ourselves right. So give herself something positive to prove herself right about.
All right.
So
We
number
have,
one takeaway.
yeah, any takeaways there in the chat? We have a minute left. What's your big takeaway? And I'll also throw it back out to Sarah and Kent if you have any closing thoughts.
I think for mine is just that the abundance isn't just financial, that when we can connect people to even an emotional abundance, then they're more likely to join your cause, and more likely to come alongside and share resources.
Thank
Well,
you.
actually, the one I have, Aaron, I think you've got a slide from the Navy SEALs.
Yep.
So this this quote that's attributed to the U.S. Navy SEALs: "Under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion; you sink to the level of your preparation." And they said that's why we train so hard. And I think in the area of mindset, we need to train, and the training can be something like this. What do you read? What do you think about? Who do you hang around with? What do you talk about when you're with them? And so I just think the word encouragement, that's giving courage to. So look for opportunities to do that for others. And then when you need courage, I will tell you, I've got a business advisor that I'm really close to. This weekend, I got some really good advice from him. And so I have to be intentional about the people that I listen to, the voices that I hear, and the messages that I cultivate.
Well, I want to say a very special thank you to Sarah Grounds for joining us on today's 47-minute webinar. Hey, some of the things coming up that you didn't see was another webinar. So we're not going to do one in December. We do these on a monthly level, but we're taking December off. We're kind of entering that Thanksgiving, Christmas season. So we're going to slow things down, but we're going to come back strong in January. So that'll include the webinar and the Asking Academy. So if we need to be talking, feel free to drop a note. Otherwise, I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. Thanks for joining in today, and blessings in your fundraising success.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks.